On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved. On a quiet weekend morning in Arizona, according to law enforcement reports, a woman disappeared from her own home. Security cameras reportedly captured activity during the final known moments. As authorities later confirmed, a ransom demand arrived, according to statements released by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. And then, in a decision that would change the entire trajectory of the investigation, as reported by local media outlets, law enforcement made a call that raised immediate questions across the nation. The homicide unit was brought in. Authorities confirmed publicly, not search and rescue alone, not just missing persons. Homicide detectives assigned to what authorities were publicly calling a kidnapping case. According to official statements, that decision, made by Pima County Sheriff Nanos himself, as he told reporters, spoke volumes about what investigators were seeing behind the scenes. Evidence that did not align with a standard abduction, according to investigative sources. Behavior that raised red flags, as law enforcement later stated, and a timeline that, the more closely it was examined by investigators, seemed to suggest something far more complex than a simple ransom kidnapping, according to statements from the Sheriff's Department. This is the investigation into what happened to Nancy Guthrie, mother of NBC Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, as documented through official reports and public statements. And this is why, according to Sheriff Nanos himself, from the very beginning, law enforcement suspected they were dealing with something much darker than the ransom notes suggested. Before we examine what Sheriff Nanos revealed in public statements and why homicide detectives became central to this investigation, according to official reports, if you follow cases where evidence tells a different story than initial appearances suggest, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here at Unsolved Archive, we examine official statements, documented evidence, and investigative timelines to understand what law enforcement knows and why cases take the turns they do based on publicly available information and official sources. Because in serious investigations, the decisions made by experienced detectives often reveal more than public statements initially disclose, according to analysis of law enforcement procedures. And in the Nancy Guthrie case, those decisions began raising questions almost immediately. As reported by multiple news outlets, Nancy Guthrie lived in a comfortable home in Pima County, Arizona. According to property records and family statements, she was in her 70s as confirmed by public information. She required daily medication for medical conditions that demanded consistent treatment. According to statements later released by Sheriff Nanos, she lived alone in a residence equipped with security cameras and an alarm system. As investigators later confirmed, her daughter Savannah Guthrie is a prominent figure in American media, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, recognized by millions of viewers every morning. That connection would later become relevant to theories about motive and targeting, according to investigative analysis reported by news outlets. But in the early morning hours, when events began to unfold according to the timeline established by investigators, what mattered most was what security systems captured and what they failed to capture. What happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home would be documented by digital timestamps, as authorities later confirmed. But what those timestamps revealed would not match the narrative that a ransom note attempted to establish. According to law enforcement statements, the timeline begins with digital evidence as reported by investigators. Security camera footage showed activity at the residence. According to law enforcement who reviewed the recordings, according to investigators' statements to media, someone was inside Nancy Guthrie's home for a specific and notably extended period. Not 5 minutes, not 10 minutes, 41 minutes, as the digital timestamps indicated according to official reports. That number became central to the investigation, investigators told reporters, because it raised immediate questions about intent and familiarity. Experienced detectives understand that duration tells a story. According to analysis from law enforcement experts, a burglar wants to get in and get out. As former detectives have explained in media interviews, speed is essential. Risk increases with every passing moment. But 41 minutes suggests something different. According to investigative analysis, comfort with the environment, knowledge of security systems, awareness of camera locations, time spent doing something beyond simply grabbing valuables and fleeing. When former DC homicide detective Ted Williams analyzed this timeline publicly in media appearances, his assessment was direct. Spending 41 minutes inside a home is uncharacteristic of a standard burglary, Williams stated in interviews. It suggests the individuals involved were familiar with the residence, its layout, and critically, its security infrastructure. According to his professional assessment, that 41-minute window raised another question that troubled investigators. The medication mystery. According to statements from Sheriff Nanos, Nancy Guthrie required daily medication, as authorities confirmed publicly. Those medications were essential for managing serious health conditions. According to the sheriff's statements, they were in the residence, accessible and visible, as investigators later confirmed. Yet according to law enforcement statements, when Nancy was taken from her home, those medications were left behind. A kidnapper demanding ransom, presumably wanting to keep a victim alive long enough to collect payment, leaves behind the very medication that keeps that victim stable. As investigative analysts noted, the contradiction was stark. According to law enforcement sources, either the abductors did not understand the medical necessity, which seemed unlikely given the time spent in the residence according to investigators, or the medications were not taken because keeping Nancy Guthrie alive long-term was not part of the plan, as some investigators theorized, according to reports. Sheriff Nanos himself addressed this publicly, noting in statements to media that Nancy was in need of medication, daily medication. By the time investigators were making public statements, multiple days had passed. The window for medical complications was closing, as medical experts explained to reporters, and no medication had been provided according to any evidence available to authorities, as Sheriff Nanos confirmed. The security camera situation. The security camera situation added another layer. According to investigative analysis, the residence was equipped with cameras designed to capture activity around the property, as authorities confirmed. But according to investigative analysis reported by news outlets, the cameras inside the home were not functioning during the critical period, not broken randomly, not malfunctioning by coincidence, according to investigative sources. Inoperable in a way that suggested deliberate action or foreknowledge, as investigators considered according to reports. Detective Williams noted publicly in media interviews that the extended time inside the residence led him to believe that the individuals involved were well aware of the cameras and knew those cameras were inoperable in that home. This knowledge could come from direct experience, Williams explained. Someone who had been inside the residence before, who had access to the property, who understood the security layout according to his analysis. Or it could come from information provided by someone familiar with the home, as investigators considered, a contractor who had worked there, a service provider who had regular access, someone in the social or professional circle who possessed detailed knowledge of security vulnerabilities. According to investigative theories reported by media, either way, it pointed away from a random abduction and toward a targeted, carefully planned operation, according to law enforcement analysis. The ransom communications. Then came the ransom communication, as authorities confirmed. A demand was made according to official statements. Contact was attempted, as investigators later revealed. But the ransom process itself raised questions according to law enforcement sources. Experienced kidnapping investigators look for specific patterns in ransom situations, as experts have explained to media. Communication methods, payment demands, proof of life protocols, timing of contacts. The behavior in the Nancy Guthrie case did not follow standard patterns that professional kidnappers typically use. According to investigative analysis reported by news outlets, the amount demanded was not publicly disclosed in detail, but the manner of communication and the timing of demands created doubt among investigators about whether this was genuinely a financially motivated abduction, or whether the ransom element was staged to misdirect the investigation. According to law enforcement sources quoted in reports, multiple deadlines passed as authorities confirmed. Communication became irregular according to statements, and critically, no credible proof of life was provided in a manner that satisfied investigative standards, as law enforcement told reporters. These factors combined to create significant skepticism among law enforcement about whether they were dealing with a legitimate ransom kidnapping. According to official statements, it was at this point that Sheriff Chris Nanos made the decision that would define the investigative approach. As he explained in public statements, he brought in the homicide unit as authorities confirmed publicly, not quietly, not as a precaution kept from public view. Openly and deliberately, criminal investigation specialists were assigned to what was publicly being called a kidnapping case. Sheriff Nanos explained this decision in terms that were carefully chosen but unmistakably clear, as reporters documented. He stated in press conferences that he gets briefed on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times, on different search and rescue operations. Rarely, he emphasized in his statement, does law enforcement ever call out homicide in missing person cases. But this one, he said publicly, came across with some information that was concerning to him. Information that made him believe the case needed to be approached from two angles simultaneously. As he explained to media, search and rescue teams would continue their mission looking for Nancy Guthrie, hoping to locate her alive, according to his statements. But the criminal investigation team needed to start their work because, as Sheriff Nanos put it directly in public remarks, there is something that is not right here. That statement, delivered publicly by the county's top law enforcement official during press conferences, sent a clear message. According to media analysis, investigators were not treating this as a standard kidnapping. As became apparent from official statements, they were treating it as a potential criminal matter, involving the most serious outcomes. According to law enforcement sources, the evidence they were seeing, the inconsistencies in the timeline, the behavior of whoever was involved, all pointed toward a conclusion that Nancy Guthrie might not be found alive, according to what investigators told reporters. And more importantly, that her disappearance might not be what it initially appeared to be, as law enforcement suggested in statements. Theories about what happened to Nancy Guthrie centered on several possibilities, each supported by different elements of the available evidence. Theory 1. Kidnapping gone wrong. According to investigative analysis reported by news outlets, one theory held that this was indeed a kidnapping that went wrong. As some investigators considered, someone targeted Nancy for ransom, underestimated the complexity of executing a successful kidnapping, made mistakes in the ransom process, and when complications arose, the situation escalated in ways that led to the current criminal investigation. According to this theory as reported, this explained the ransom notes and initial communication, but required explaining why medications were left behind and why the ransom process became so irregular. Theory 2. Staged kidnapping. A second theory suggested this was never truly about ransom, as other investigators theorized. According to sources, the kidnapping was staged to misdirect the investigation. According to this line of thinking, what happened to Nancy occurred for personal reasons, financial motives unrelated to ransom, or as part of a targeted attack motivated by resentment or psychological factors. According to this theory reported by sources, the ransom element was added to create the appearance of a random crime when it was actually planned and personal. As this theory suggested, this better explained the familiarity with the home, the timing, and the inconsistencies in the ransom process, according to investigative analysis. Theory 3. Insider involvement. A third theory, less developed but still considered, involved the possibility that someone close to Nancy, whether family or close associate, was involved, either directly or through hiring others, as some theories suggested. According to reports, this would explain the insider knowledge, while potentially accounting for staging elements designed to point suspicion away from those with the closest connections. Who had access? As investigators dug deeper into the evidence available to them, according to reports, they began focusing on specific questions that could narrow the suspect pool. Who had the kind of detailed knowledge of the residence that would allow someone to disable or avoid cameras, as investigators considered according to sources? Who knew about Nancy Guthrie's daily routines and vulnerabilities, according to investigative analysis? Who understood the security system well enough to operate inside the home for 41 minutes without triggering responses as law enforcement sought to determine. These questions pointed toward individuals with access, according to investigative theories reported by media. The contractor theory. Contractors who had recently worked on the property became subjects of interest, as authorities confirmed they were interviewing service providers. A neighbor noted publicly in media interviews that Nancy's roof appeared to have been recently recoated. The roof looked unusually clean compared to other homes in the area, which had accumulated dirt from recent rain. According to the neighbor's observations, that neighbor, Laura Gargano, specifically suggested to investigators in statements to CNN that they check on contractors who had done work before the disappearance. Day workers who spend time at a property, who see the interior layout, who observe routines and security measures, who develop familiarity with the residents, fit the profile of someone who could plan and execute an operation like this, according to investigative analysis reported by experts. But contractors were not the only focus. According to law enforcement sources, investigators also looked at delivery drivers, service providers, anyone who had regular or recent access to the property, as authorities confirmed they were conducting interviews. The timing factor. The timing of the disappearance added another dimension. According to investigative analysis, Nancy was taken just as Savannah Guthrie was scheduled to leave the country to cover the Winter Olympics for NBC. As news reports documented, that timing seemed too precise to be coincidental. According to investigative theories, someone who knew about Savannah's travel schedule would also likely know that Nancy might be alone, that immediate family response might be delayed, that a window of opportunity existed, as investigators considered, according to sources. This suggested someone with insider knowledge, according to law enforcement analysis. Not necessarily close family, but someone in the circle of people who would have access to information about schedules, travel plans, and household routines, as investigators theorized. The decision to involve specialized criminal investigators early fundamentally changes an investigation. As law enforcement experts have explained to media, resources are allocated differently. Evidence is processed with different priorities. Interviews are conducted with enhanced protocols according to standard investigative procedures. Searches focus not just on rescue, but on comprehensive evidence recovery, as authorities confirmed. And investigative theories shift from hoping for return to determining what happened and who was responsible, according to how these cases typically proceed, as explained by experts. Investigators worked methodically through each theory, testing them against available evidence as law enforcement sources confirmed. They interviewed contractors and service providers who had access to the property, according to official statements. They reviewed financial records looking for unusual transactions or motive related to money, as standard investigative procedure requires. They examined Nancy's personal relationships, social connections, and any conflicts or tensions that might have created motive, according to what investigators told reporters. They analyzed communication patterns, travel records, and digital footprints of anyone in Nancy's circle, as authorities confirmed. And they continued searching both for Nancy herself and for any physical evidence that might break the case open, according to reports. The work was painstaking and often frustrating, as law enforcement sources described. Leads that seemed promising would reach dead ends, according to investigative updates. Evidence that appeared significant would prove ambiguous upon closer examination, as authorities acknowledged. As the case continued without resolution, according to ongoing media coverage, investigators faced public pressure to provide answers. The Sheriff's Department held press conferences when significant developments occurred, but the frequency of those briefings decreased as the investigation moved into more sensitive phases, as news reports documented. The public statement that no suspects or persons of interest had been identified remained accurate from a legal and investigative standpoint, according to official releases. But it did not mean that investigators lacked theories or areas of focus, as law enforcement sources explained. It meant that no one had been identified with sufficient evidence to make that designation publicly. This is a critical distinction in law enforcement communication, as experts have noted. Naming someone as a person of interest or suspect carries legal and ethical weight. As attorneys have explained, it can affect their rights, their reputation, and the investigation itself. Law enforcement must have substantial basis before taking that step, as procedures require. The absence of public identification does not equal absence of investigative attention, as law enforcement sources emphasized to media. The family's response added emotional weight to a case that was already generating national attention, according to news coverage. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings released video statements pleading for their mother's return. As media documented, the anguish was visible and genuine. According to those who viewed the statements, Savannah spoke about nightmares, about her mind feeling haunted by what might be happening to her mother. As she stated in the video released to media, the family's pain was real, regardless of what investigative theories were being pursued behind the scenes. The emotional reality for the family existed separately from the investigative reality. As observers noted, they wanted their mother back. Investigators wanted to determine what happened and hold someone accountable according to their respective priorities. Both goals were important, but they required different approaches and led to different actions. The case remained open and active, according to official statements. Investigators continued following leads, processing evidence, and building their understanding of what happened and who might be responsible, as law enforcement confirmed. The decision to involve specialized criminal investigators early ensured that evidence was preserved and processed with the standards required for eventual prosecution, according to legal experts. Search efforts continued in targeted areas based on investigative theories and analysis, as authorities stated, and Sheriff Nanos maintained his commitment to providing updates when significant developments occurred, while protecting the details that needed to remain confidential for investigative purposes, as he told media. The investigation of what happened to Nancy Guthrie represented law enforcement working methodically through a complex case where initial appearances did not match underlying evidence. According to analysis of how the case developed, where a ransom note existed but behavior suggested something more complicated, as investigators determined. Where 41 minutes inside a residence told a story that contradicted the narrative of a random abduction, according to digital evidence, and where the decision to call in specialized criminal investigation teams reflected professional judgment that whatever this case was, it needed to be investigated with the most comprehensive resources available, as Sheriff Nanos explained. That judgment shaped everything that followed and positioned investigators to pursue justice for Nancy Guthrie, however long that pursuit might take, and wherever the evidence might ultimately lead, according to law enforcement's stated commitment. The 41 minutes would remain central to understanding what happened, as investigators repeatedly emphasized. The medications left behind would continue to raise questions about intent and planning, according to investigative analysis. And the decision by Sheriff Nanos to involve his most experienced criminal investigators from the beginning would prove to be the foundation upon which the entire investigation was built, ensuring that when answers eventually came, they would be supported by evidence collected and analyzed according to the highest investigative standards as law enforcement procedures require.